everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because we're going to dive into something really cool. We are mapping out one of the absolute bedrock concepts in macroeconomics, the savings function. But we aren't just going to sit here and memorize textbook definitions. No way. We're going to literally build this out step by step, visually. By the time we wrap up, you'll see exactly how an economy's wealth-building engine is perfectly mapped onto one really elegant little graph. So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll define the savings function. Then we'll walk through phase 1, the DIS saving zone, phase 2, breaking even, and phase 3, positive saving. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with the core properties of savings. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Defining the savings function. Okay, so before we draw a single line, we really need to nail down the core mathematical relationship we're exploring here. The savings function is actually remarkably straightforward. It just defines the relationship between the level of saving and the level of income. In math terms, we write this as S equals F of Y. Basically, savings is a function of income. Remember, in macro theory, you can only really do two things with your income, right? You either consume it or you save it. So an economy's total saving is quite literally just a direct function of its income minus its consumption. Simple as that. Okay, let's dive into this. This two-panel diagram is really where the magic happens. Up on the top, we've got the consumption function. That's showing consumption expenditure plotted against income, and it includes that handy 45-degree guideline that represents the exact points where income equals expenditure. Now, down on the bottom panel, we have the savings function. And here's the crucial thing to keep in mind. Because income can only ever be consumed or saved, that whole Y equals C plus S rule we just talked about, the bottom panel has to be a perfect mathematical mirror of the top panel. The gap between the 45-degree income line and the consumption line up top literally dictates exactly what the savings line is doing down below. Moving on to phase 1, the DIS saving zone. Let's trace this from the very beginning of the horizontal axis. We want to see what happens when a hypothetical economy's income is super low, or, even zero. Because here's the thing, even with absolutely zero income, an economy still has to consume just to survive, right? People still need to eat. This baseline level of spending is what we call autonomous consumption, and it's represented by the letter A. But wait, if you have zero income, how are you paying for that consumption? Well, you have to borrow it, or you drain your past savings. Because of this, at low income levels where consumption is greater than income, savings actually has to be negative. We call this dis-saving, and it means our savings curve literally starts below the zero line, at negative A on the vertical axis. Take a look specifically at that OY1 mark on the axis. If you check out the top panel, the C line, which is consumption, is physically higher than that 45-degree income line. The economy is literally spending more money than it's making. Now follow that exact same OY1 income level straight down to the bottom panel. You see how the saving line, S, is sitting firmly below the horizontal axis? It's negative. That visual gap up top translates flawlessly to that negative dip on the bottom. All right, phase 2, breaking even. As we move our timeline forward along the income axis, we hit a really critical equilibrium point. It's the break-even level of income. This is the exact moment where the total income of our economy perfectly matches what it wants to spend on consumption. Think about it. If consumption exactly equals income, if C equals Y, there's absolutely zero left over. And if there is nothing left over to stash away, then savings has to equal precisely zero. Watch how beautifully this plays out visually. Focus in on the OY0 income level. Up top, the consumption curve C perfectly intersects that 45-degree income line. They're exactly equal. Now drop your eyes straight down to the lower panel. Right there at OY0, what is the savings line doing? It is perfectly cutting through the horizontal zero axis. This just brilliantly illustrates the math behind it all. The second that gap between income and consumption vanishes up top, the savings line hits exactly zero down below. And that brings us to phase 3, positive saving. So this is definitely the most exciting phase of our timeline. Our economy has finally pushed past that break-even point and is starting to build real wealth. As income keeps rising past that tipping point, something awesome happens. Income finally starts to exceed desired consumption. Basically, the economy is pulling in more cash than it feels the need to spend. All that leftover, unspent income goes straight into the bank, pushing the economy firmly into positive saving territory. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking way over at the OY2 level of income on the right. Up top, that 45-degree income line is finally soaring way higher than the consumption line. You can see this distinct positive gap, labeled A, where income is clearly greater than consumption. And again, this translates perfectly to our bottom panel. Look at the savings curve S, down at OY2. It is confidently pushed above that horizontal zero line. The economy is generating positive savings now, and honestly, the higher the income climbs, the wider that gap up top gets, and the higher the savings curve climbs.
Let's wrap this up with the core properties of savings.
Okay, we've traced the lines, we've seen how they mirror each other, so let's distill all this down into 3 essential takeaways. First, the saving line is upward sloping. This is super simple but incredibly important. Higher income leads to higher saving. Second, let's look at the steepness, or the slope of that savings line. In economics, we call this slope the marginal propensity to save, or MPS. Basically, this just asks, if you get $1 new of income, what fraction of it do you save? The rule here is that MPS is always positive, but less than 1. Meaning, if you get a raise, you're definitely going to save some of it, but you won't save literally 100% of it because you'll probably spend a little more on yourself too. And third, the average propensity to save, or APS, which is just total savings divided by total income, actually increases as income rises. This means as an economy gets wealthier, it doesn't just save more total dollars, it actually saves a larger percentage of its overall wealth.
We've just seen how brilliantly the savings function maps out wealth building as income rises, but it actually leaves us with this incredible kind of mind-bending puzzle. If higher income leads to higher savings, and saving builds wealth, what exactly happens to an economy if every single person suddenly decides to aggressively cut back their spending to save all at once? I mean, since one person's spending is literally another person's income, could trying to save too much actually cause everyone's incomes to totally plummet? That, my friends, is a famous macroeconomic brain teaser known as the paradox of thrift, and it is definitely something to chew on as you keep exploring macroeconomics. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep focused, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.